Hi, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of The Apparition, and welcome to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a book haul video. I have not done a book haul video in a really long time. I don't think I've done any this year. So I think the last one I did was last year at some point. And they've just been piling up and piling up. So I really need to do it if I'm going to do it. And because there's so many of them, I'm actually going to have to split this video in two and do one this week and one next week because there's just too many to get through. So hopefully you're good with that. If you are, stick around. So I'm going to be starting with the manga, and I've got volume 14 and 15 of Spy Family. I really enjoy this series. I just wish they were a little bit longer so that I had more things to love for a longer period of time. But outside of that, no complaints. And then my favorite horror mangakist is Junji Ito, and I got Frankenstein. I'd already read this one, but I just wanted my own copy of it. And it follows the story of Frankenstein pretty closely, but then the ending is changed, and I thought it was a cool twist. And then he's got a couple of short stories after it. And then when I found out there was a Liminal Zone number 2, I had to run out and get it because I really loved the Liminal Zone volume 1, and so I was very excited for this one. And then I bought his two newest ones, which is Moan and Statues. So my daughter brought this home from school. Her teacher was getting rid of some of their old books, and she knows I like creepy things, so she brought me this, which I thought was pretty sweet. This is called Suddenly Supernatural, and this is about this little 7th grader whose mother is a medium, and then she discovers that she could also see ghosts. And it's hard enough being a 7th grader without having to deal with the supernatural at the same time. And then during parent-teacher conferences, I always take my kids to the book fair, and I generally end up buying something for myself. So these next few all came from the the book fair. And so we have Identikill by K.R. Alexander, and this is about these twins, and one of them ends up dying, and the other one ends up seeing her ghost. And at first, she's glad to have her twin back, but as time goes on, she kind of doesn't like her intrusion into her life, especially when she meets a new best friend, but her sister doesn't like that she found this new best friend and gets jealous. And then there's a second one called Bad Sister, and this is where the ghost sister is taking things too far, and she's now starting to possess her twin and getting her to do things that she doesn't want to do. And then we have some ghost stories by Lindsay Duga. We have The Haunting, Ghosts in the Headlight, Ghosts of the Harvest. And then we have It's Watching by Lindsay Curry. And this is about a group of friends who sneak into a cemetery on Halloween night because they want to prove that one of the local legends of a ghost is true. And when they're there, they don't see anything, so they just go home disappointed. But then the next day, there's a meme that shows up on all of their cell phones, and apparently a countdown timer for 3 days. And they soon realize that they only have 3 days to figure out what this meme is about and why it's showing up on their phone and how to stop it before catastrophe happens. Then we have The Strange and Deadly Portraits of Brian E. Gray. This is a retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray. Then we have the third book in the new Are You Afraid of the Dark series, and this one is about this girl and her friend who see this mysterious light out in the woods. So they follow this light and they discover this mysterious circus, and at first it's all fun and games until they start to question things like why this circus is even here. And then we have Ride or Die by Delilah S. Dawson, and this is about this girl who is trying to make it into the popular girls group, and they all work at this amusement park, and they start this game of truth and dare that gets a little out of hand. And then we have Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave, and this is about this girl whose family owns a funeral home, and her aunt gets accused of stealing something from the dead, and so she's trying to clear her aunt's name. And apparently it says that she comes into contact with the most wrathful patriarch in the town, a menacing sleep paralysis demon, a cunning grave robber, and a terrifying half-vampire, half-ghost that lurks in the cemetery. So it sounds like she's going to get into all sorts of adventures. So before I start the YA books, I just remembered that I did do a small book haul in my vlog of The Storm by Rachel Hawkins. So if you saw that vlog, I did do a mini book haul in that video because I went shopping at Barnes & Noble. So I'm not going to include those books in this video. So if you want to see what I purchased at Barnes & Noble during that vlog, then go ahead and watch that video. I will link it at the end. Okay, so I bought one vintage book called The Last Act by Christopher Pike. And then we have The Obsession by Natasha Preston. And this is about a girl whose mom is one of those family vlog bloggers, so she's always been in the public eye. Her mom's always recording her, but then people that look like her start ending up dead, and she's afraid that they're going to be coming for her next. And then we have The Silenced, and this is about this girl who was doing a school project on this abandoned, creepy house that was like a house for girls back in the day. And she thinks it's just going to be a normal project, but when she goes to this abandoned farm to do her research, she ends up seemingly taking something home with her, because all of a sudden she feels this deep rage and this need for revenge that she knows isn't coming from her, and she keeps seeing this girl in the mirror. And then we have Night Terror by Ralph Vincent, and this is the second in a new series that he's coming out with. I have not read the first one, so I didn't necessarily want to read the second one in case it spoils it, but all I know is this takes place in a mall in 1988. Enough said, I want to read it. Then we have Glorious Rivals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this is the sequel to the second series in the Inheritance Games series. And this is about a group of 7 people who are taking part in a game put on by these billionaires in order to get money. And it says that there are no coincidences, everyone is a liar, and someone is watching. And then if you've read the Inheritance Game series, we have the same backwards and forward, and this is actually about the main character in that series, her parents, and their romance and their love story. And what's really cool about this is, you read this first section, like the first half, and it's from her mom's point of view. But then if you flip it over, then you get to read the story from her dad's point of view. So I just think that's really kind of cool. And then we have The Resurrectionist, and this is about this girl and her sister, and their father has passed away, and she found this journal, and her dad was a bit of a mad scientist, and he learned how to bring people back from the dead in a Frankensteinian manner. And so I believe her sister ends up passing away, and then she brings her back, just like Victor brought back Frankenstein. But of course, things never go the way that you expect or want them to. And then we have The Dreadfuls by A. Ray Dunlap. And this one isn't technically a YA novel, but I hear that it reads like a YA novel because it is about a teenager and it is kind of a coming of age story. So it's kind of like a bridge between adult and young adult, I should say. And this one takes place in Victorian times and is about Jack the Ripper, which is really all I need to know. Then we have The Riddle of Thorns, and this is a dark academia book about this girl whose mother disappeared and she was shipped off. But then when she turns 18, she returns to Paris, because this takes place in Edwardian Paris. And her mother has left a will, because she's either dead now or declared dead because she did go missing. But she's not the only one that's receiving this inheritance. There's like 3 other people that are supposed to all inherit the same thing. And so basically they have to solve this mystery and this puzzle, and the first one to reach the treasure gets to keep it. And the treasure is this flower that apparently comes from the Roman gods and will grant you a wish, any wish of your dreams. It's supposed to be gothic in nature, and I love gothic books. Dark academia sometimes really works for me, sometimes doesn't. It really just depends on the atmosphere, but I have high hopes for it. And then we have A Girl Walks into the Forest, and this is about this girl who is very, very beautiful, and she is poor from this small little village, but she catches the eye of this rich count because she is so beautiful, and he wants her to come to his castle and marry him. But in order to do so, she has to travel through the forest, which is an extremely dangerous thing to do. And so she's attacked while in the woods by these creatures, and her face is all clawed up and she's no longer beautiful. And so when she reaches this castle, she thinks, yay, I've made it, I survived. But the count's like, ew, you're ugly now, you've got these ugly scars on your face, I don't want to marry you anymore. So it sounds like something else sinister is happening at this count's manor, and maybe she would have been safer in the forest. And then we have Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews, and I just read an adult novel by this author and really enjoyed it, and so I'm looking forward to reading something else by her. This one is kind of a take on The Secret Garden, but make it creepy and gothic, which I always love. So I don't really know much about it other than he's supposed to be taking care of his cousin or something, kind of just like in The Secret Garden, but it sounds like he actually attempted to kill him, or maybe did kill him or something. I don't really know, but I just know it's supposed to be gothic. It's supposed to be about The Secret Garden, all things I love, so I'm looking forward to it. I love the back cover. I just think that looks so cool. So now we're going to start on our adult books, starting with ones that are just kind of random that don't really have a category. So first we have Meet the Newmans, and this is about this family who, back when television was black and white, they were like the biggest thing on television. It sounds almost like a reality show. They didn't really have reality shows back then, but that's what it makes it sound from the synopsis, is that they're basically just filming this family and they're this idyllic American apple pie life, and everybody likes to tune in and watch this perfect family. But now it's 1964 and things are changing, and families don't no longer look the same as they used to. And so they're about to air the last episode of this TV show, and they kind of have creative differences when it comes to this episode, because on the one hand, one of them wants to just keep it the way it's always been, and on the other hand, they want to show what life really is like now versus then. So this sounds like it could be really, really fun and interesting, and I love this cover. And then we have The Mad Wife, and this is about this lady living in the 1950s, and she's the quintessential stay-at-home mom where she cooks and cleans and takes care of her family and all of that. But after the birth of her second child, this other woman moves in next door, and she befriends her, and she starts to realize that this lady has different thoughts and ideas when it comes to being a woman and being a family, and people start thinking that she's going mad because she's having changing opinions and she's confused and she no longer knows how she feels about her life. And then in that same vein, we have the book club for troublesome women, and this takes place in the 60s. And as the title would suggest, this is about a group of women who are part of this book club, but one of the women in the group brings the feminine mystique to book club one day, and it starts stirring up this whole hornet's nest of things in these women's lives. And then I have a murder mystery, which is Mayhem on the Marzipan Express. This is the second in a series. The first one is called The Crime Brulee, and it's about this woman who's part of this baking competition, but there's a murder that needs to be solved. And so in the second one, her and her boyfriend go on this Scottish train, which is temporarily renamed the Marzipan Express because there's this famous chef that's going to be on this train, and apparently he has some kind of culinary delight that is going to be the experience of the century, And of course, during this culinary experience on this train, they find a dead body and once again must solve the murder. And then I have a historical fiction novel called In the Shadow of a Queen, and this is about Queen Victoria. Well, it's not about Queen Victoria, it's actually about Queen Victoria's daughter, and her daughter is very free-spirited and thinks differently about things than her mom, so her mom just wants to marry her off to a good husband, but she wants to find her own place in the world, and she has all these feminist ideas about women being able to be doctors, and she talks to suffragettes, so this sounds like it could be a lot of fun. Now we're going to be getting into some romance novels, and I'm going to start with A Secret in the Garden, and this is almost more of like a romantasy because it does kind of have fantastical elements, but by and large it's more like a gothic secret garden, but then make it into a love story, basically. If you saw my wrap-up video, I kind of have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I loved it, and on the other hand, I found it a little bit problematic. But either way, this is one that I picked up on a whim one day when I was grocery shopping. And then I have a couple of gothic romances. We have Whispers of Shadowbrook House, and then The Orchids of Ashthorne Hall. And then I have the new book by Nicholas Sparks, and apparently M. Night Shyamalan, which I absolutely adore his movies. I'm actually just finished rewatching them, and so I bought Remain. I have not read anything by Nicholas Sparks. I've seen the movie The Notebook, and there was one other movie, I can't remember what it's called, but I remember I loved it until the end. I hated the ending. But I know he's a very, very, very famous romance author, and obviously M. Night Shyamalan is a famous thriller/horror director, so it's interesting that they're collaborating on this. And it just says a supernatural love story. So I really don't know anything about this, but I'm looking forward to seeing what it's all about. And then we have Ghost Business, and this is about these two people who both do ghost tours. And so she lives in this town, and she's been doing these ghost tours for a long time, and he is just coming in and invading her space, basically. So they come up with this deal that by the end of the season, whoever has made more money from this ghost touring business gets to stay and continue doing their ghost tour, and the other one has to vamoose and get out of town. But obviously sparks start to fly between them. So now that the more like creepier romances, I mean they're not really creepy, but the ones that have a little bit of gothicness or supernaturalness to them is over, and now we're going to be talking about some holiday romances, starting with Meant to Be. And this is about this girl who gets accepted to college, and she does tell her best friend that, but she doesn't say goodbye though. She just packs up and leaves, and he's really upset about it because he's had feelings for her for the last few years, and he was just getting up the courage to tell her, but before he could, she's gone. And then she comes back during the summer break, and she brings a boyfriend back with her, which just complicates things and stirs up things in their friendship that could break it. And then we have Grace and Henry's holiday movie marathon, and I read this last year and I thought it was really good. And this is about these two people who are both grieving the loss of their spouse, and so they kind of comfort each other and try to help each other through their grief, but then they start catching feelings for each other. And then we have A Home for the Holidays, and this is about this woman whose mother during the holidays was very, very good at making the holidays bright and fun. And, she believed in Santa Claus way longer than all of her friends because her mom was so good at keeping the magic alive. But throughout the rest of the year, she's an alcoholic, and she's really has a hard time with other aspects of her life with her mother. And so when her mother passes away, she has all of these conflicting emotions. And then the holidays come around, and her mom's best friend shows up on her doorstep, and she kind of wants to talk to her about her mom because she knows that she has this complicated relationship with her, and she doesn't want her to think that the addiction is all that her mother was, so she starts telling her stories about her mom's life, and she convinces her to come home with her for the holidays so that she's not alone. And she ends up meeting her son, who is going through a divorce, and they start this romance. So this one, I think it's going to be more of like a side plot of romance. I think it's mostly going to be about the mother-daughter relationship with just like a side of romance. So I guess I lied. I do have one more like creepy romance. It's more of a romance / thriller, and that's How to Kill a Guy in 10 Days. And this is about this woman who participates in this speed dating, but the lights flicker and go off when she's in the middle of doing the speed dating, and then when the lights come back on, one of the people, I almost said contestants, one of the people that are part of the speed dating ends up being murdered, and so she's simultaneously trying to find love while also trying not to get killed. And then we have The Heartbreak Hotel, and this is about this woman who gets her heart broken, and she's left in a position where she can't make rent, and so she asks the landlord if she can turn the house into a B&B, and so he agrees to it, and she turns this B&B into kind of a refuge for heartbroken people like herself, and then she starts falling for the landlord. And then we have Witch You Would. This is about this reality TV show in a world where magic is real, and so they can both perform spell work, and so they're on this reality TV show about their magic, and she doesn't like him because he's actually a celebrity, and so each of the contestants on the show has to be teamed up with a celebrity, and she's teamed up with him, but she doesn't like him because his online personality just isn't something that she likes. But what she doesn't know is that's not really him. He's putting on an act, but she thinks it's the real him, and apparently they've been pen pals, but she doesn't know that she's writing to him, which is one of my favorite tropes ever since I watched You've Got Mail and fell in love with it. I love the trope where, they're writing to each other or whatever, and they don't know that it's each other. I love that. So he does know it's her, but she doesn't know that it's him. And unfortunately, while he's part of this reality TV show, he has to put on his celebrity persona, and he hates that because he doesn't want her to think that he's this arrogant jerk when he's actually not, and he has a crush on her. So it just sounds like it's going to have everything that I love, so I'm very excited for this one. And then we have Most Eligible, and this is also about a reality TV show, and this woman is actually a journalist, and she only agrees to go on this dating show because she's trying to take down the producers, but she starts catching feelings for the host of this show. And then we have The Odds of You, and this is about this girl who is a writer, and she is on this plane to go somewhere where she can write and not be bothered because she is having some writer's block, which always happens in books like this. But while she's on the airplane, she's actually sitting next to this famous actor, and so these paparazzi that are on the plane with him get the mistaken idea that she's his girlfriend. They're trying to convince all these people that no, we're really not together, we're not a couple, but they just don't believe them. And then they flit off to their own destinations, but then she ends up meeting him again. I think they're in Scotland. And so wherever she ends up in Scotland, she ends up bumping into him again, and they start catching feelings. And then we have The Boyfriend Project, and this is about this woman who finds out that she's being catfished by this man. Well, not him, but and the man has catfished a couple of other women as well. And so they find out and they start this kind of smear campaign online, and the video goes viral. And so these three women that have been catfished become friends and, try to take him down. And so she thinks that this is a golden opportunity to start this app that she's always wanted to pursue. And so this app is supposed to help people that are in her same situation. But of course, even though she's sworn off men at this point, she of course meets somebody that is willing to change her mind. And then we have How to Write a Love Story, and this is about this girl whose father passes away and he wanted her to ghost write his last novel, which is supposed to be the ending to his epic fantasy that everybody's been waiting for. And so obviously this is intimidating, and she just feels like she's not going to be able to finish her dad's last novel and make it good enough for his legacy, But the editor of this book is actually a fanboy as well, and so he goes off to this destination with her where she can find peace and quiet to write, and he can help edit and he can help with the continuity problems and stuff because he is a fanboy and he knows the story, he knows the characters, and he can help her to write this novel for her father. And then we have The Shippers, and this is the newest by Catherine Center, and I've really enjoyed all of the books from Catherine Center that I've read. She does kind of goofy rom-coms, but they always have something that's a little bit more serious to them as well. And this is about this girl who is on a destination cruise wedding for her sister, and she is convinced that all of her bad luck with dating and men is because of this one moment in time back in her past where she kissed the neighborhood boy, and he was her first crush and her first kiss, and she just has decided that everything since then has just spiraled down. And so she, for whatever reason, thinks that if she can woo him, because he ends up being a guest at this wedding, that she can find that closure and she can become better at love. So I'm already at 35 minutes into this video, and I am not even halfway through the book. So I think I'm actually going to have 3 parts this book haul, because I'm just not able to get through them as fast as I thought. And normally if I have too long of a video, then people just don't want to watch it because it's too long. So I'm gonna have to end the video here and have a 3-parter. I hope that's okay with you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a thumbs up if you did to let me know. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!